Hello and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul, Justin Baker, co-host. We're back. Summertime brings about what? Summertime brings about a lack of urgent things to talk about in hockey. So we take the summer to relax a little bit, as do you. And we decided that we wanted to bring you a little series moving forward. A little fun, just kind of mulling through each NHL team and ranking their top 10 players. Now, some of those teams have some epic players on them. Some of them have hardly any players worthy of a top 10 on most teams. Columbus Blue Jackets, Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, Columbus, good point.
Yeah, but we will dive into all that. Before we get into that, hello, Justin.
Hi.
Sorry,
No, you're good.
I just went. We have four things we want to talk about, and we're going to hit each one of them. We're going to spend less than a minute on them. They are the most recent news, and we feel as though we want to give our opinion on what's going on. And so I'm going to throw the Wild firing Paul Fenton after just one season. Your thoughts?
Yeah, my 60-second thoughts. Basically, I think you listen to the press conference and basically Craig Leopold stating that it's a bunch of little things and he just wasn't a good fit in the organization. In my mind, I think it was kind of like one of those situations where he wasn't doing enough to push the team forward when you see the rest of the Central Division getting better around him. And maybe the straw that broke the camel's back was when you see him trying to offload Parise somewhere over the last few weeks, and you hear, Zach Parise come out and say, he's not looking forward to being part of a rebuild. Maybe this was a mistake being in Minnesota, yada, yada, yada. I'm just paraphrasing. But so maybe Leopold looked at it and said, hey, you know what? The morale's pretty low. We gotta change it up pretty quick. Good on them for doing it. Even though it is an odd time of the year to do it, good on them for realizing it now versus halfway through the year or anything like that.
Yeah, and I think that the owner, Craig Leopold, his quote, he says, hey, he's not the right fit. When you read the quote, I believe we have a good hockey team, a team that will compete for a playoff spot this year. I think I read that and I go, I believe we have a good hockey team. Now, he didn't believe we had a good hockey team. He, Paul Fenton wanted to blow everything up and felt like we didn't. I think we have a good hockey team. I think we'll compete for a playoff spot. And I want to bring a manager who will help us win a Stanley Cup, i.e. with our group, with Parise, with Suter, not trying to offload those guys and start over. It's clear he doesn't want to start over, but ultimately he's the one who's a total fail because you brought in a guy who it was pretty clear what he was trying to do right off the bat, and you bought into it for a minute. So this is just as much your fault as anyone else. You didn't have to hire a guy to come in and start blowing things up. You're the freaking owner. You could have said, I don't want to blow anything up. Don't trade Charlie Coyle. Don't trade Nino Niederreiter.
Yeah.
He obviously,
2 GMs in less than a year and a half. Fletcher's gone, Paul Fenton's gone,
and Fletcher was the GM in Minnesota.
Yeah,
it's something about those Minnesota guys.
I don't know what it is, and it's weird too because now it's reminiscent of Philadelphia, where there's just maybe a little dysfunction going on between management and ownership, and so we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, maybe they'll. I don't know, but sign Jake Gardner?
I heard that they're already asking permission to talk to Ron Hextall, though, speaking of Philly. So
interesting. That would be very interesting, seeing as he's a guy who didn't want to make any moves. So, wait, Ron Hextall isn't... Oh, no. Isn't he he's the new GM of Seattle?
No, that's Ron Francis.
Oh, yeah, Ron Francis. Yeah.
Close, though.
Summertime. So... Let's go. Ottawa Senators acquire Ryan Callahan, and a 5th-round pick from Tampa for goaltender Mike Condon and a 2026 round pick. Really, the Senators get a little bit of relief in terms of actual dollars, even though the cap hit is heavier. They will only spend what you were saying, $1 million.
Yeah, insurance picks up 80% of the LTIR contract, so. Real dollars since the Senators only got to pony up $1 million versus even though Condon's, I think, $2.4 million on cap hit, but he's owed $3 million. So Tampa kind of picks up that tab to throw him in the minors, and, Ottawa gets a little real money savings, but meets the cap floor.
Yeah, and Tampa Bay can do whatever they want with Condon.
Yeah. They're going to bury him is what they're going to do.
They might bury him. They could also maybe deal him off and eat a little bit of the salary, or they can.
Connaughton's still a very capable backup, I think, in this league.
He just had a really bad year last year.
He did. Well, it's Ottawa. Come on.
That's a good point. The Vegas Golden Knights acquire Nikita Gusev from the New Jersey Devils for a third-round pick and a second-round pick in 2021.
Hey, good on Vegas for getting something for a guy that wanted out
and never played a game for them anyways.
Right, exactly. Never has.
In my mind, they just got a free second and third round pick for a guy who has never played a game in the NHL.
Yeah, now while there's a lot of hype around him, the most irritating part of this whole thing for me as a Red Wings fan is that the New Jersey Devils Twitter account is posting all these gooses running around on their page and like the goose is loose, and I'm like, dude, Detroit fans have been saying that about Gustav Nyquist forever, just bury that one and go away.
And the Coyotes are bought again, this time by billionaire Alex Mariulo. He's got a bunch of casinos and TV stations, and there you go. They have a new owner.
Yeah, hopefully a little consistency now.
Yeah, somebody with actual money.
Right.
And yeah, maybe I got to think now for their general manager. You're thinking if this continues to be just a middling type of team, that they might flush house and say goodbye. So bringing in Phil Kessel was a nice tip of the cap.
Sure,
can't be mad about that. It comes down to Arizona's drafting, anyways. In my mind, they've had these players that people go, oh yeah, they're going to be so good, and they just haven't panned out in Arizona, like Dylan Strome.
Heyo.
So okay, those are what's the things going on in the NHL. See, we told you we didn't need to have a show for 2 weeks because that was it. I mean, we could talk about Mitch Marner again, but nobody wants to hear that. No. So instead, we are going to go through the top 10 Detroit Red Wings of all time and the top 10 Nashville Predators of all time. A new team and an old team. As best we can, we're going to go a team post 1990 expansion and before. That might have a little bit of a
Yeah, there were 20 teams, so yeah, we'll see how that works out.
It'll come close enough, but we'll try to mix it in with the new and the old. With that being said, the Detroit Red Wings. Let's talk about guys that missed your list. Or before we do that, Before we do that, I think we should lay a few ground rules as we did, but we already laid these ground rules. But just so you're aware. Of course, Ron Francis played for the Toronto Maple Leafs for about 3 months after getting traded at the deadline. Maybe you'd consider him, if we were just saying who's the top 10 players who's ever played for a team, he might make the, somewhere in that list for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But we are saying they have to have played at least one season for that team. And that had better been a pretty darn good season. Not that if it was one season at age 40, they're probably not going to make that list. Like, even if they were an amazing player prior, like Wayne Gretzky, an amazing, of course, one of the best of all time, probably the best of all time. He's not going to be on your list of best New York Rangers of all time. Just probably not going to make that list.
True.
Maybe you're going to toss him. He did play there for 3 years, but Mark Messier probably not going to make the list of best Vancouver Canucks ever. So. Let's dive right in. Who missed your list?
Well, for the Detroit Red Wings, I have a couple goaltenders and a couple players that missed my list. Okay. The both goaltenders, you can probably guess, Dominik Hasek and Chris Osgood. Oh, okay. Yeah, Hasek, obviously, he was not his Buffalo Sabre-esque type guy in Detroit, but he was still... Yeah, he won a couple cups. He was very successful there. Osgood, we know the story, 400-plus wins. He had a lot of success in Detroit. However,
did you say Hasek won 2 cups?
He did.
Wasn't Osgood the starter?
He was. Yeah, but that doesn't mean he didn't get a ring.
True.
So actually Hasek started the playoffs and then got booted after 2 games in 08. So, and then the other 2 players for me, Henrik Zetterberg and Brendan Shanahan, just missed my list.
Okay.
So,
all right. Yeah, Brendan Shanahan also missed my list as well. If you do a Google search and you just all-time best Red Wings and you kind of flip it, like, memories being jogged of certain players. Of course, Tim Shovelday missed my list.
I can't believe that.
Bob Probert.
Stop.
I wanted to put Bob Probert as my 10, just because. Or you could almost go, all right, I'm putting Bob Probert and Darren McCarty as my 10, and just because of the impact that they had. Of course, we're not talking about the best grinders of all time or the best enforcers. Guys that missed my list. I would point most significantly to Alex Delvecchio. Going pretty old school. He was a part of the Ted Lindsay, Gordie Howe, Alex Delvecchio, the production line. And I just felt like he was probably your Brendan Morrison to Todd Bertuzzi, Marcus Naslin.
Wow.
He's the third guy. It's just at the time there was 6 teams and there's only so many guys to go around. So not that Alex Delvecchio wasn't a fantastic player. He's up there in all-time scorers for the Red Wings, but he's probably the most significant player that missed my list that I think that a lot of people would maybe have on theirs. So,
okay, interesting.
With that said, let's dive in. Your number 10.
Wow, a guy you just talked about, Alex Delvecchio. You know what? You got a guy who, played a lot of games for the Red Wings, and he's up there in terms of point totals, and maybe he is the Brendan Morrison in terms of...
He is third all-time in points.
Third all-time.
1,281.
Yes.
He's also third all-time in games played with 1,550. Only Howe and Lidstrom played more. He actually played more than Yzerman.
Yes, he did. Well, let's not forget Yzerman had a lot of injury-riddled seasons, but so for me, Alex Delvecchio, I loved what he was able to do, brought a few cups to the Red Wings, and he was very productive, and I think that at least garnered a top 10 when you manage to hit top 3 all-time points for an original 6 team like that.
Okay. My number 10 is... I went back and forth between this.
Okay.
So Marcel Dion played for the Red Wings.
Short-lived, yes.
For 4 years. And... he obviously went on to make his real name for himself with the LA Kings, but was drafted by the Detroit Red Wings, started his career there. He had 366 points in 309 games. He averaged a point per game in every season except his rookie year. He was 1 point off that pace, but had a 121-point season in 74-75. But I think because of how bad they were, Red Wings weren't great at that point in time. And because that's not really the team, I'm going to put him on the LA Kings list for sure. And I don't want to have Marcel Dion on 2 lists. And so I'm going to leave him off my list. And my number 10 is Chris Chelios.
Ooh, I like it.
Chris Chelios comes over as... the hated guy. People hated Chris Chelios.
Oh, because he was from Chicago, that rivalry.
When he got traded to Detroit, it was... people were like, how...
it was like a Todd Bertuzzi situation.
How are we ever going to like this guy?
Yeah.
We hate this guy. And he came in and just... People fell in love with him, fell in love with his play. Not only was he almost flawless defensively, he threw huge hits. He was just a fantastic defenseman. And so... And he played until he was...
45. I think he was at 47 playing on the Thrashers minor league team or something like that.
Yeah. He played in the minors, but he was on the team for 98, not 97.
True.
So he won 3 Stanley Cups with the Wings. And so he's my number 10. I think probably the third best defenseman, second or third best defenseman to play for the Red Wings. So,
okay, I respect it. I thought about it, and I really wanted to put Chris Chelios on it, but I had a hard time pick. It's harder to put a defenseman on a top 10 list than it is for a forward. It's a lot easier to just look at point totals and accolades and say, okay, here, cool, let's throw this guy on. So, but moving on, number 9 for me, another guy part of that famous production line era. Sid Abel.
Okay, yeah, Sid Abel. 17th all-time in scoring. played 570 games for the Red Wings. So yeah, can't complain about.
I'm sorry. I did say production line. He was not on the production line.
He wasn't on the production line. Yeah.
But
I was like, maybe there was 4 guys on that. Maybe he was on the power play with them or something.
Yeah. Did receive a Hart Trophy, couple 3 championships. I'm sorry. But yeah, while his, I guess you could say, production isn't as large as other guys like, your Henrik Zetterbergs and, guys like that. Just
like he played in an era where there was less scoring. Too,
sure.
So
yeah, and what he was able to do in his era, was pretty dang good. And there's a reason why he made the top 100 NHL players of all time list. So, there you go.
Yep, can't complain about that. My number 9 is Henrik Zetterberg.
Nice.
5th all time in scoring for the Wings. Played almost 1,100 games and just shy. I think if his back hadn't given out, he would have hit 1,000 points with the Red Wings and would have been only the 5th guy to do that. So, I think there's no reason. You said that Henrik Zetterberg missed your list. I feel like he's on that list because he really became the face of that team the last 10 years. And when we're talking about decades worth of Red Wings hockey where, I guess I don't know much about what happened with the Red Wings in the 40s, like the 30s and 40s. So
right.
You come into the 50s, so you're talking 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and then a couple years in the 2000s. He's probably their best player for 15% of their team's existence. And so I think that he not only was a fantastic goal scorer and setup man, he was a great two-way player as well. And so it's hard necessarily to quantify his point totals. He also played the majority of his career during a time where there wasn't a lot of goals happening.
Very true.
The fact that he's almost a point per game, or about 0.887 points per game, is pretty solid.
All right. Love it. Can't complain about it. So
I'm going to throw out my number 8.
Dude, do it.
Also another guy that missed your list, Mr. Christopher Osgood.
Ooh.
And I'm actually very surprised that he didn't make your team, make your all-time
Yeah,
team.
I wanted to put more goalies on this, but
as the goalie guy, I'm surprised that he
I even thought about Jimmy Howard for a minute, but because he's number 3 in terms of victories among Red Wing goaltenders, but just
true.
Yeah, couldn't do it. Sorry.
Yeah, I think I know the other goal, the one goalie that will make your list.
Well, I'm sure everybody does. So.
Okay, your number 8,
Red Kelly.
Okay.
Yeah. We've talked about it before in terms of, in our top centers, top defenseman shows and stuff like that. And for me, this guy I loved his two-way game. I love the fact that he was able to move from defense to center just because they're like, hey, we got this other team over here that's dominating at center and offensively, and we know you know how to play defense very well, so go do it. And he was a very successful centerman. And so, granted, he did spend, a lot of his career with Toronto. The accolades, he was able to still bring 4 Stanley Cups to Detroit and 8 regular season championships. The guy was just phenomenal at both ends of the ice for me.
Yeah, I have Red Kelly a little later on in my list.
Good.
But I was gonna try to hide this and cover it up.
Okay.
But I forgot about Terry Sawchuk.
How?
The reason is because I was just I did exactly what you were talking about. I was thinking of forwards and defensemen. I was like, I'm gonna have some defensemen on this list. But my guy, Chris Chelios can't be on this list if Terry Sawchuk isn't.
Well, now you got
so everybody shuffles down, and I'm gonna have to throw Terry Sawchuk in at about a little later. So just assume now, Chris Chelios is at 11.
All right, just missed
because
Marcel Dion.
That's just how it's gonna have to go. But. So you did your number 8.
Yeah. So who's now your official number 8?
So now my number 8 is Sergei Fedorov.
Okay.
Yes. So Sergei Fedorov, he is the only player to win the Selke and the Hart Trophy in the same year.
Yes.
An incredible two-way player. It's actually unbelievable the amount of just Hall of Fame two-way players that the Red Wings have had over the last 30 years. You think Sergei Fedorov, Henrik Zetterberg, and there's two other guys that are coming later on in my list that are unbelievable two-way players, some of the best. It's pretty crazy, and that they just kept churning them out for a while. I'm wondering where they are now, but now Ken Nolland's gone. Who's going to draft him?
Oh boy! Wait, what?
Okay, so yeah, Sergei Fedorov, also all-time list of goal scorers. He is quite high on that list. He's sixth, surpassed by Henrik Zetterberg towards the end of Zetterberg's career, but he played 180 fewer games, had 6 less points than Zetterberg. So one of the few players to average more than a point per game, 4th all-time points per game. Actually, the highest points per game for a Red Wing is
Marcel Dion.
Yeah. So I wasn't wrong to at least think about him.
No, you were not.
Only played 309 games, though.
Yeah, but none of us talked about the guy who's number 5 on the points per game
Billy
list.
Taylor.
No, I'm sorry. Actually,
Played
really?
one
You
season.
got Billy Taylor?
One season.
Oh, well, Hockey Reference lists Paul Coffey, so that's who I'm thinking of too.
Yeah, they must cut off at a certain amount of career games played.
That's
Maybe
true.
100 or something like that.
Yeah, I can still. So in terms
I
of
don't
Paul
even know who
Coffey,
Billy Taylor is.
I know I don't either. In terms of Paul Coffey, though, man, I still remember him batting that own goal in.
Yep.
And so for me, that still haunts my memories. And so I just he goes down a notch because of that. Anyways, let's move on before I start going on a Paul Coffey
Your
rant.
number 7?
My number 7, Ted Lindsay.
Okay, he's my number 6. so
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Great guy on the production line. I mean, we know what they were able to do, the three of those guys, Del Vecchio, Lindsay, and how, boy, Ted Lindsay, he ranks number 9 all times in points for a Red Wing player.
And we're talking definitely an era where, like, the 50s goal scoring was way down. Some of the lowest it's ever been in the league's history. And so goaltenders were phenomenal from this era. And,
or were the players that bad?
And, Sticks, goalies kept getting better, right? And Sticks kept staying straight.
Right.
And so then as the technology changed for the players, then they started to blow up some goalies. And then the goaltenders' equipment got better again. And in the goaltending position, it swung back in towards the goaltending position in defense. And now we're starting to see a swing the other way where we're trying desperately to foil goaltenders.
Won an Art Ross trophy with 78 points. If that doesn't tell you, the production was down.
Not to mention the fact that even his off ice contributions to the game are beyond what he ever did on the ice too. I mean, the guy's got the only Red Wings player with a trophy named after him.
True. He did found the NHLPA basically. So
yeah, it's fair. It used to be called, what did it used to be called? That trophy was the crap.
Oh yeah, that's gonna drive me nuts.
Used to be called something else. So yeah, Ted Lindsay on top of that 1,423 penalty minutes.
Not too shabby.
So a solid plus 10 over his career.
Those were rough years for players with lack of equipment and guys throwing elbows like no one's business.
Yeah.
All right, so we got to go to my number 6 then, huh?
Yeah.
Well, probably one of my favorite recent Red Wings. A guy who I wish played a couple more years with the Wings, and maybe coincidentally enough, it's funny. I wish he had came a little bit earlier in his career to Detroit, but Pavel Datsyuk, known as the Magician to those who, and it's funny, Siri for a while you could literally ask, "Hey Siri, who's the Magician?" and it would respond Pavel Datsyuk, which was fantastic. Loved it. But this guy to me was the best thief the NHL has seen in a long time.
His takeaways were...
My goodness. He led the league in takeaways almost every year. If not, he was guaranteed top 3 that he was in the league. I mean, I remember when he came into the NHL 2002, he played on the third line with Brett Hall. If that doesn't, he centered Brett Hall.
And Brett, Brett Hall was like, dude, who the heck is it? Like, this kid's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Coming from Brett Hall, it's pretty good compliment. Yeah, he won a lot of things. He did win the gold in world championships, and he won the gold even at age 39. In these last Olympics, I know it was without most of the NHL players, but Russia wins their gold, and you look at particular seasons that he had in like 08, 09, and 07, 08 when they went to the Stanley Cup Finals, and he's putting up basically 100-point seasons, 97 and 97, 2 87-point seasons before that, where goal scoring was not super high at these times, and he just always seemed to have weird injury problems. But
right, that's more the tail end of his career. And I remember one of those 97-point seasons. I think he lost out on the Art Ross by like 1 point, and I was so pissed about it because I wanted him. Red Wing hadn't won it in a while, so I was just a little upset about that.
When's the last time a Detroit Red Wings player won the Art Ross?
Probably
Ted Lindsay with the 70.
I don't even know. That's a good question. But yeah, I mean, four Lady Bings, 3 Selkies. The guy was all-world at both ends of the ice, and there's a reason Red Wing fans still miss him.
Yes. He was your number 6?
He was my number 6.
He's my number 6 too, and Ted Lindsay was my number 7. I just
shuffling him down.
Shuffled.
Yeah. Okay.
My number 5 is Red Kelly. So we've already jumped all over Red Kelly. He's phenomenal, and obviously he's not quite as high on the scoring list. Where are you, Red Kelly?
Yeah, he's a little further down.
Yeah,
little further down because he only finished with I think 400 or 500 points, somewhere in that range. So
yeah, I don't know why I'm having. It's because his first name is actually Leonard.
Yeah.
So he's 14th all time. Played forward, but again, played in a time where goal scoring was down. But yeah, just again another amazing two-way player. I never got the chance to watch him play, but just the stories and the fact that. If a guy's his jersey was just retired, and so many guys were like, it's about freaking time. This guy's. Right. I was actually at that game where they retired his jersey. It was pretty cool.
Nice.
And I mean, even the highlights of him in the 50s, sometimes those highlights when you're watching them in black and white, and this looks terrible, and you can tell that it's the frames per second is
like
very
14.
And even then, you could tell that this guy was in a different league when you're watching him. So he was my number 5. Who's your number 5?
My number 5 is someone you've already talked about, Sergei Fedorov.
Okay.
Yeah, love this guy. Like I said, a little higher up, just because I love the fact that he was able to. I mean, he literally played defense at one point for Scotty Bowman. So he goes a little underrated during his time, I think, just because he played behind Steve Yzerman and
he
Shanahan.
Also had a lot of internal issues in terms of his contracts, and it was also
he got an offer sheet at one point, and
from the Carolina Hurricanes, and he ended up making $10 million a year. He was one of the first guys to make $10 million. He might have been the first guy to make $10 million. In the league.
That wouldn't surprise me.
There was also towards the end of it didn't really matter. Once he left the Red Wings, his career kind of curtailed, but it's just. I think all those things where there was just this struggle of he wanted more. I think he obviously appreciated Yzerman, but I think that there was some kind of
I want to be the guy.
Sure. And he wasn't. Also, when you look at his playoff numbers, I'm trying to find. Here we go. His playoff numbers are actually quite impressive as well, but 176 points in 183 games. But it was the goal scoring just disappeared. I mean, in 95-96, the year the Red Wings won 62 games.
Right.
He had 2 goals in 19 games in the playoffs. And in 98-99, a year where the Red Wings were expected to win the Cup, 1 goal in 10 games. In 01-02, when they did win the Cup, 5 goals in 23 games. Seems a little bit low. It seemed like in the playoffs, I know at times his goal scoring dried up. So if there's a knock on him, it maybe was that. I remember somebody saying Sergei Samarov.
Never heard that, but I love it now.
All right. You're number 4.
Yeah, I'm sure you and I have maybe not the same order, but we have the same people.
Same guys.
Number 4. My number 4 is Terry Sawchuk, one of the winningest goalies ever in NHL history, let alone for the Red Wings. So,
and I mean, let's be honest. I mean, he won so many games whereas Martin Brodeur played a lot more games than he did.
Right.
Didn't he? Yeah. So that's
there's not much that needs to be said about Terry Sawchuk that already hasn't been said. He's legendary for sure.
Yes.
And if you've seen his face, you would understand why I respect him so much.
I think when we did our top 10 goalies of all time, which You could go back. You could dig that up in the archives. You can find the top 10 goalies. I believe that he was in the top 3 or 4.
Oh yeah, he was top 3, I think, for both of us.
Yeah. So
he wasn't my number 1 because I already know that's
interesting that he is the 4th best player on the Red Wings. Yet he was in our top 5 for goaltenders.
Yeah, it's crazy when you actually look at our top 4, or when you guys listen to our top 4. Many of these guys could go to like 27 other teams and be the number 1 person to ever play on that team. But because you're an original 6 team, you've been around for so long, you get the luxury of probably running into a few of these.
And the Red Wings have it. I would say in terms of recent memory, in the last 30 years, it's hard to find a team that has been better than the Red Wings.
Right.
Okay, so you're number 3. Okay, I want to see the order that these went in. Okay, I had Terry Sawchuk at 4 as well. My number 3 is Nicholas Lidstrom.
So is mine.
That's where I dropped the defenseman. I'll be honest, I thought about putting him at number 1.
Really?
But now I think in terms of if we were to take all 3 of those guys, put them at their prime at the same exact time, in the same era, given all the same advantages, I actually think Nicholas Lidstrom's probably the best player out of all 3 of them at his position. Just absolutely dominant. I mean, think about how many Norris trophies. Would he win 7 Norris trophies in a row? Did he win them all in a row?
Not in a row.
Just 7 total.
Yeah, he won 7 total, not in a row.
So he was the best player at his position for 7 years, and he probably could have and should have won more.
Probably. I still am a little upset about that Chris Pronger win, but we won't talk about that.
Yeah, but I mean, Chris Pronger. At least it was Chris Pronger. Still,
right. Sure.
Also one of the best defensemen of all time. So when I think about Nick Lidstrom, it's almost like it's the Terry Sawchuk thing. Like, yeah, it's because he's a defenseman that I naturally don't put him higher on the list. But I really think, in terms of impact on the ice, I don't think there's a better player who's ever played for the Red Wings. But in terms of just sheer, like, there also has to be some personality in here, like, and some memories made. Nicholas Lidstrom, the things that are memorable about him is you're like, what really cool thing?
Consistency.
Like Steve Yzerman. Obviously, we know Steve Yzerman and Gordie Howe are the last 2 names on this list. We'll see which order we put them in, but you say Steve Yzerman, and I immediately think of him getting the puck at center ice and stealing the puck from Wayne Gretzky,
right,
and walking in and wiring a shot over John Casey on the St. Louis Blues and winning that series. Like, there's so many epic moments.
Or when he was tripped, fell down on his back, like literally passes it behind his back, like he's hooking it around his shoulder while laying down, not looking to Larionov, who scores. I mean, there's those plays, right?
And when he lifted the Stanley Cup in '97, like, as much as it pained me, that's just one of those moments. When Lidstrom, I don't remember Lidstrom lifting the cup. It's not in my mind.
Okay.
I don't remember.
He is the first European-born captain to do it.
I'm not taking anything away from him.
No.
But I'm just saying that there was something different about Yzerman, something different about Howe, where they were, yes, they play forwards.
Lidstrom was quietly the best player.
Yes.
Whenever he played.
I think there were times where Lidstrom was the best player in the entire NHL.
Absolutely.
Whereas
I would not disagree with that.
I don't know if Yzerman was ever the best player in the NHL.
I might disagree with you on that one. But
I really don't think, maybe 97-ish, but I think by that point he wasn't putting up the same kind of point totals either.
No, not at all.
Like, Jágr was better than Yzerman. You would have taken Jágr probably over Yzerman.
Well, I don't think so.
Win a Stanley Cup? Dang, that's a hard one. We have to play that game sometime. Okay, you're number 2.
Number 2, Gordie Howe.
Oh,
yeah. I did not put Gordie Howe number 1. And this might have more to do with the fact that I grew up watching Steve Yzerman.
That's fair.
But to me, the two-way game that I saw Yzerman, when Scotty Bowman came in and said, hey, Yzerman was putting up 140-point seasons, like, not a big deal. Like, I can go out there and score a crap load of goals.
Let's be honest. Everyone was putting up 140.
Sure. I mean, between Mario, Wayne Gretzky, those guys were all putting up 100-point seasons, like it was no big deal. But when Scotty Bowman came in and said, hey, I know you literally just put up 137 points, but I want you to start playing two-way game, or else you're never going to win a cup. And what did he do? He transformed his whole entire game to become one of the best premier two-way guys in the league, and still managed to put up 95, 85-point seasons while being so good defensively. He was able to help his team win some cups, and so that's why, to me, he was just number one. I think Gordie Howe played in an era where he didn't have to really. You didn't see him transform his game. He just did him. And interesting fact, though, about Gordie, I mean, like, during that time, he was that much stronger than other guys. He really didn't have to transform his game. I mean, he was bigger, he was stronger, and still quick on his feet, because let's face it, during the summer, most guys weren't training and working out. Most guys had to get other jobs, and Gordie's other job was he was lifting shingles and concrete, and so he was working out all the time anyways. So, but anyways, I think that was my biggest reason why I think I put Yzerman over Gordie Howe.
Yeah, I'm actually right now. I'm just scrolling through when Yzerman was putting up his big point totals, and he was never above third highest in the league. I mean, it was Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, Steve Yzerman.
Sure.
So, I mean, there's no knock on Yzerman to say he wasn't the best player.
No,
ever,
but I mean,
because it was the two guys ahead of him, even just in terms of points.
No, yeah, absolutely. In terms of points, but like, for instance, in '89, when he put up 155 points, his highest total of any season, right? That was with a team that was referred to as the Dead Wings for a reason. And
right.
Gretzky, no knock on him. We all know he can produce, but he did have Yari Curry, Mark Messier, and other guys around him. And I can't remember where he was in '89 right off the top. I think he was still with Edmonton. That's when they got beat by
Mark Messier.
No, with Wayne. Yeah, that's right, because they got beat by Calgary and a big upset. Anyways, but he had other players around him where really Yzerman didn't at the time. So, you might be able to make the argument that Yzerman was better that year, maybe. I don't know, but
see, and this is why I can't put Yzerman above Howe, because on an all-time greatest list, you're telling me you're going to put Yzerman above Gordie Howe?
Yeah,
all-time greats.
Yeah.
All-time greats.
I might.
Steve Yzerman, better. I just don't think so.
I might.
I don't like.
And again, it might have something more to do with the fact that I grew up watching Yzerman,
right.
Watched him play.
You have some. Yes, you watched him lift the cup. He's on your team. I understand that. But Gordie Howe was in a complete league of his own. I mean, there's only a couple guys with more points than him all time. He also played forever, and that's a knock, I guess, on Yzerman, is that he couldn't stay healthy. His knees just didn't work out for him, but Howe stayed.
Listen, Howe only put up 55 more points, like 55, 50-ish more points, and he played almost 200 more games than Yzerman. So think about it that way too. So, but again, to your point, the era where he played at, right? There were
right.
Sure. So I don't know. Agree to disagree.
I just don't know if you can take Steve Yzerman. Like no list ever has Steve Yzerman higher than Gordie Howe. I've never seen a list where he's anywhere close to him, to be honest, because I think that Steve Yzerman, while he put up a bunch of points in particular seasons, was a really great player.
Well, let me ask you this, though.
Howe was absolutely the best player in the NHL.
Well, he absolutely was. I won't disagree with you
and
there.
Yzerman never was.
But let me ask you this. If you're going into a Stanley Cup final and you had one guy to choose...
When are we playing, though?
In their prime. Just
1950s?
Any guy whenever he's in his prime. Would you rather have... which guy would you rather have center or, be on your first line?
The problem is I never really watched Gordie Howe play.
Sure, me neither.
How good he was. So that's the tough part about these lists. But okay, obviously we have a little bit different order there at the end, but I don't think you can go wrong with either one of those. I'll take one of them.
No, you wouldn't even be able to go wrong if you stuck Lidstrom up there at number one. You could definitely make an argument.
You could put Terry Sawchuk up there at number one, too.
Absolutely. And honestly, I think out of all these guys, Lidstrom, best hockey IQ out of all these guys, in my opinion. So, I don't know.
Howe was probably ahead of his time in terms of a power forward.
Yeah.
He was just a beast before guys were actually beasts.
Very true.
All right. There's the Detroit Red Wings. Hope you enjoyed that. If you disagree with us, at OT Hockey Talk on Twitter. And you can blast Justin for his pick.
Go right ahead.
Is Yzerman better than Howe? If you agree with that, I'd love to know. Argue that. See where that gets you.
All right.
Okay. Nashville Predators. This is going to be a little bit more interesting, I think.
I was going to say, this was a little harder for me to decide. Yeah.
The order is hard.
Yeah, because when you get guys that, you don't have a team that has a lot of prolific scorers, a lot of history behind it. It's harder to really nitpick the guys that you want to put on your list. So
I'm not going to let you see this list. I'm pulling it up on my phone.
Good. All right. Good. I like that. So why don't you tell me then first who hit your just missed?
Well, I don't really have a just missed list.
Okay.
Brian Johansson missed my list.
Yeah, he's on mine as just missed.
Other guys that maybe could have been on this list and weren't. I don't know.
Let me just say I got Craig Smith and Dan Hamhuis on my just missed as well. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I wouldn't even I wouldn't have even thought about putting them on a list.
Okay.
Yeah. So everyone else is fair game. I'll say one guy that I thought about putting on here was Mike Dunham. Really their first really good goaltender. And he missed my list though.
All right.
Only one goalie made this list.
Only one. I got 2 goalies on this list.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thomas Vokoun made your list. All right. I guess
Well, maybe he did.
I kind of forgot about Thomas Vokoun, but he wouldn't have made my list.
Now, maybe it's Dan Ellis. I don't know.
Dan Ellis.
Or Chris Mason.
Ryan Ellis. Okay. Well, I'll give you my 10.
Go ahead.
My number 10 is Paul Kariya.
Wow. He played one season.
He did play one season for
One
the Nashville
season.
Predators.
So I guess technically that does count.
And even though it definitely wasn't his best season, I will admit, there's something about when Paul Kariya came to the Nashville Predators, the team wasn't, it was 2005. I actually played 2 seasons with the Predators. The team wasn't really seen as a destination spot. And I really think Paul Kariya changed that. I think it's the reason why other players came there later. And he also, at the time, he had put up the best season ever in Nashville Predators history. He had 85 points in 82 games, and he scored 31 goals. And the next year, 76 points in 82 games. So that was coming off of a really disappointing season where he left Anaheim and went to Colorado with Teemu Selanne for that 1 year.
Right.
And he put up 11 goals in 51 games. So he had this big bounce back year.
Yeah, Colorado was starting to fade out of existence at that point. And
yes, and I think the Predators made the playoffs for the first time with Paul Kariya.
They did, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Now, did Forsberg come to Nashville before Kariya? I can't remember exactly because I thought about putting Forsberg on the list just because of how good of a player he is, but then I remembered, he only played one season, and it wasn't even one full season at that. So
yeah, Forsberg only played 17 games for them. He scored two big goals for the Preds. Yeah, he came in 06-07, and it would have been the year that Paul Kariya was there.
Okay, so Kariya was there right before.
They were there
him,
at the same time.
Yeah, I do think when you see a guy like Peter Forsberg choosing to go to Nashville too after Kariya, it's like, we got superstars coming here now?
Yep.
Cool, we can go there.
Yep.
So, yeah, I agree with you. That's a good pick then.
Okay.
My number 10.
Your number 10.
Thomas Vokoun. We talked about him just briefly. But, this is a guy who basically, to me, was... you can talk about, Dunham, but to me, this was like the first legit goaltender that I watched in Nashville. Was like, this guy's pretty dang good, and he was there for quite a while. Number 3 all time on the goals against, number 3 in terms of save percentage, and of course, he's number 2 in wins for the franchise. Again, before he went to Florida, it was Nashville, and he set up that franchise for maybe some longer term success, but. I think they didn't really have many star players at the time when they started out, and he was one of them. So, number 10 for me.
All right, and
number 9.
Let's go your number 9.
My number 9 is Martin Erat.
Okay, Martin Erat didn't make my list, although he is second all time in scoring.
He is, yeah, and that's partially why I think he was there in an era where. They didn't have any star players. They didn't have a lot of guys producing points, but he was a consistent guy for the team. He, third all-time in games played for the franchise. He was there for a while, and granted, the tail end of his career wasn't as hot, but...
Honestly, though, if you think about this, he should be on my list now that here's why. Martin Erat, he scores 481 points for the Nashville Predators, gets dealt for Philip Forsberg,
right,
who is 5th all-time, 305 points. So really, that player is... responsible for 786 points.
If you think of it that way, sure. Yeah. You could make that argument.
I will.
But you have.
He is responsible for, not directly, but he put up the points, and then he was dealt and replaced by a player who's even better than him. And so now, you've got both those guys in the top 5. I mean, that's a good pick. My number 9 is Roman Josi.
Okay, he's a little higher on my list, but I like it.
Yeah, Roman Josi is 4th all time in scoring, 348 points. Nashville, probably one of the few teams with 2 defensemen in their top 4 of scoring. I would venture to guess that there are no other teams in the league with 2 players in their top 4 that are defensemen in scoring.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that.
He's unbelievable, fantastic defenseman. I mean, the fact that Nashville has only been around for 20 years. 20?
Yeah.
Yeah, 20 years.
Not that long.
They have pumped out some phenomenal defensemen.
Yeah.
All of which are on my list.
Okay. That's very true.
This list is just, we talked about, it's really hard to put defensemen on this list.
Yeah.
Not the Predators.
Yeah. That's very true. And
there could be more defensemen than forwards on this list.
Ekholm, and they got more guys coming. They've got a boatload of defensemen, so love it.
You could make an argument. Ryan Ellis missed my list, but you could make an argument that Ryan Ellis could be on this list.
You very well could.
And you said Dan Hamhuis could have been. If Hamhuis could have been, then Ekholm definitely could be too.
Right.
So, there's a lot of guys that could just miss. Okay, let's go
number 8.
Yeah, your number 8.
My number 8 is Mike Fisher.
Okay.
Maybe not in terms of production, he's one of the better Predators of all time, but I think in terms of his two-way play, his leadership to me was phenomenal. When this franchise finally started getting the wheels turning and started being a real Stanley Cup contender, he was right there at the center. There's a reason he wore the C, and to me that speaks volumes.
He missed my list, but it was just there's some of those guys they just have to miss. But
sure,
I suppose I could have. Not had Paul Kariya. No, I'm very happy with Paul Kariya being on this list. I really think that he's at that time in his career, he truly was one of the most talented players that team's ever had. But yeah, Mike Fisher misses my list. I just think that there's better players. Yes, a great leader. Nashville's had a lot of blue collar leaders be their captain. Their first captain actually just passed away, I think.
Was it David Legwan or
no?
Oh, passed away. I'm sorry.
He died.
Craig Johnson. I think that
Greg
Johnson. Yeah. He played for Detroit too a little bit.
Yeah.
Boy, I wish I could think off the top of my head who it was. It's gonna drive me nuts.
Yeah, I'm gonna find it here because now Tom Fitzgerald.
Oh,
he was their first captain.
I was not.
Yeah, actually, they had Tom Fitzgerald and then Bill Holder and then Tom Fitzgerald for another 3 years. But yes, Greg Johnson was the captain. They had one of those a bunch of guys were the captains.
Right, yeah.
A couple guys. They've had a lot of strange captains. Jason Arnott at one point.
Yeah. When Peter Forsberg and Tiemann split captaincy, it's like they're in this
Forsberg
weird.
Was the captain,
and he played 17 games. I mean, they're just in this weird spot where they can't decide what they want to do.
They didn't know what to do. Yeah. Okay, so my number 8 is Cliff Ronning.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Did not make my list. But please explain.
When Cliff Ronning was one of the first guys taken by the Predators, way back. He's 17th all time, 226 points in 301 games.
I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean when you consider, he's 7th all time in points per game, and he was kind of there in the very beginning. I think he was there at the very beginning, in fact, and he was. If you think about where he was before that, he was playing in. I believe he was in Arizona and Vancouver before that. Yeah, he came over. It was just a bad team. 98, 99, the Predators were horrible. and he goes from the Coyotes to the Predators in a trade, and then he was there for a couple more years. Put up some good seasons. Really, he was there. I think he was their leading scorer in those first few years. So, since this is a team that's only been around for 20 years, I'm going to give the nod to their best player during their first few years.
Okay, that's respectable. Okay,
I'll give you my number 7.
Please.
Too.
Yeah.
Philip Forsberg is my number 7.
Okay.
Philip Forsberg, obviously, he's the replacement for Martin Erat and what the replacement he was. He's 5th all-time in scoring right now. My guess is when all is said and done, he will be he'll eclipse a few guys. He might, I don't know how long he'll be with the Predators. You just never know. But I think he'll probably the next few years he'll eclipse everyone but the guy at the very top, who we'll get to, I'm sure, at some point. But 5th all-time, I think he's underrated, but at the same time, he leaves something to be desired. I don't know if Philip Forsberg would make very many other teams' top players. If he had the kind of career that he's had so far with Nashville. Granted, he's hasn't even played 400 games for them, but I'd say in terms of talent, he's definitely right up there.
Yeah, and that's why he's a little higher on my
Probably
list.
their best power forward to ever play for them. Philip Forsberg. Yeah.
I don't know if you'd consider him a power forward.
He's a little bit bigger of a guy.
I mean, he is a little bigger, but yeah, okay. So number 7 for me, guy whose career I wish had been a little bit longer with Nashville, unfortunately, because it would have been fun to see him and Shea there. But Ryan Suter, for me, is my number 7. A guy whose tenure was, again, like I talked about, a little short, but he was very, very effective while he was there. He actually
did
still
play
ranked
542 games, so it wasn't
right. But I mean,
that short.
he still split. He left town when he was 27, 28 years old.
7 seasons. With
So,
the Preds.
when you come in at 21 and you leave when you're 28, I mean,
yeah.
I would have liked to have seen more out of him. He was consistent though, which was great about him outside of his, his first growing pain year. But, he consistently would play 24, 25 minutes a night, much like he does now where he's close to 30 all the time. But,
he's always put up consistent, solid numbers.
Yeah.
He's never a guy he's never scored more than 9 goals in a year, but he can always move the puck. He's
responsible, which I loved.
Very consistent.
And so you knew what you were getting when you threw him on the ice, and obviously it meant a lot for a team that was trying to find their identity late in the in the mid 2000s, trying to get going, and they got Shea Weber and Ryan Suter. Now you have the option to throw a couple different guys out there on defense, and you're not just again, we talked about it. They were a defense factory. So
let's also talk about how Ryan Suter, and now this is over the course of his career, but nonetheless an impressive stat. He has played in 96.3% of the games possible to play in.
That's impressive. That's pretty dang impressive.
He's only missed about 3.5%.
Yeah, for a guy who plays 25 minutes a night, that's impressive.
Yeah, very impressive. He appears a little bit later in my list. My number 6, though, is also a defenseman.
Okay.
He is 5th all-time in Nashville Predators scoring. 6th, sorry. Kimmo Timonen.
Ooh.
Yeah.
He's a little higher on my list.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah, but he's on there. So.
He was, I remember somebody telling me a story about him and a couple other guys on that team, but just how, I think it was I'm pretty sure Kimmo Timonen and Andy Delmore. Do you remember Andy Delmore?
I do.
I think Andy Delmore scored 18 goals one year, and everybody thought that he was just going to be this unbelievable goal scoring defenseman. How many goals did he have one year? He had 18. He had 16 and then 18, and he got sent off to the Buffalo Sabres, and he scored 2 goals in 37 games. He never in the NHL. He had those 2 years, 16 and 18. Then he played 37 games for the Sabres. Then he played 7 games for the Blue Jackets and completely vanished from the league.
Wow,
that's crazy. So yeah, I mean, he was. People thought, oh man, this guy's going to be a goal scoring defenseman. Then he just vanished. Goodbye. But Kimmo Timonen was his defense partner, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
You might be.
So yeah, Kimmo Timonen he was their best defenseman before Shea Weber, Ryan Suter, and he really was. I think he was Shea Weber's defense pair at one point. I think he played with them.
Maybe
so you could say that he helped him along.
Hey, there you go.
Actually, I'm certain that he did. So yeah,
I'm certain.
Right. Your number 6.
6. Yeah, my number 6 is another. We're gonna have a run of defensemen here for me. Roman Josi, current captain, current leader for the Preds. I love this guy. Rock solid, and one stat that stood out for me right now is if you go and look on Hockey Reference, I love when they put these random stats, but like total goals on ice for, right? He's number 3 all time for the Predators. So granted, while he might not have the sexiest point totals, even though he is, I think, 4th all time for the team in points. Being on the ice for that many goals is pretty dang impressive when you consider a team that maybe, historically isn't known for goal scoring. And having a lot of point producers. So
also remember, this is like Barry Trotz's days, and these teams are just trying to grind teams out and just protect the net.
Yeah, and he is a phenomenal defenseman right now, and I would honestly probably put him in my top 10 in terms of the NHL right now.
Yes.
And there's a reason for it, so boom.
Can't go wrong with having him on your list. Probably should be higher on mine, but I have the top scorer of all time in Nashville Predators history is my number 5.
Okay.
That is David Legwand.
He is number 3 on my list.
566 points in 956 games, was traded to the Detroit Red Wings at the end of his career.
He was.
Actually. I'll tell you, he had 210 goals in basically 1,000 games. So he's got a goal about 1 every 5 games. He has .22 goals per game. And even Martin Erat scored more goals per game than that. I think that he...
Hey, David Legwand does lead the Predators in game-winning goals, though, all time. Well, that's pretty important.
Yeah. But game-winning goals can be a little weird and skewed.
Sure.
In a 5-1 win, you score the second goal, it's a game-winning goal.
Right.
Not,
I know.
I think that they should make a statistic, or, I'm sure we could find this, but goals that break a tie.
Interesting.
Because those are the goals that matter. Like, even if you let's say you score 25 goals in a year where you broke a tie. That's bigger than scoring a goal when your team's up 5-1 and you go to 6-1. Sure. Or when you score goal number 3 in a game. Let's say you go up 3-0. The other team scores a couple more, and you get the game-winning goal because you were the 3. No, the best to me would be, how many goals have you scored that broke a tie?
Okay,
I'm gonna have to figure out how to get those, because that would be a damn good statistic.
I'm sure there probably is one out there.
And top, hey, here's the top 10 players in the league that break a tie.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. You're number 5.
My number 5, another defenseman, Kimmo Timonen. We talked about him a little bit, but probably in the early days, he was like the guy for the defense factory that was Nashville.
Yep, he was like the first defenseman to come out of the factory. Finnish guy too, the only Finnish player on our list.
Yeah,
between both teams that we've done.
True. Yeah.
My number 4 is Ryan Suter. So
okay.
I have him much higher.
Okay.
He did play 7 seasons with the team.
No, I know that's quite a bit.
Which does make up 30% of the team's seasons. So he's played more than enough. And when he was a free agent, there was I think everyone knew that Nashville couldn't sign him. They just didn't have the money.
They were a budget team.
And they also knew that Shea Weber was coming up soon. And so they, rightfully so, decided we got to keep Shea instead of Ryan. And Ryan Suter, of course, he did his little blood pact with Zach Parise, and they went off to Minnesota, where they've been toiling ever since.
Ooh, it's been going well for them.
Yeah, real well. I don't think they've ever had, and I can't think of very many players in my lifetime that can play as often and as consistent as he can. It hasn't hasn't resulted in much in terms of postseason success, but I don't think that that's really on him. So,
no, I don't think so at all. Okay, good pick.
You're number 4.
Number 4, Philip Forsberg. A little lower on your list, but higher on mine, just because I love this kid's abilities, his offensive ability. He is great on both ends of the ice in terms of puck play. He's one guy I watch, and unfortunately, the only knock on him I will say is he's a guy that I watch and I'm like, I know he's got more in the tank. I know he can do more.
Yes.
And so I keep waiting for like that breakout season where he's going to bust 85, 90 points. but I haven't seen it yet. And maybe that is because, maybe he is a little bit more dependent on other guys around him, like Ryan Johansson and, whomever else he lines up with. But at the same time, I mean, he's up there in terms of point totals all time for the franchise, and I know that's going to continue for this talented forward. I think he's a phenomenal player, and so for me right now, he's number 4.
Okay, who's your number 3?
Number 3, the all-time leader in points, David Legwan.
Okay, you have him a lot higher than I do. See, I don't think he was actually very good. I think he was
maybe
just
not
given a lot of opportunity with the best players that they had because he was an okay he was a good two-way guy.
He absolutely was, and he would be an ideal number 2 center for a lot of teams at the time. But again,
first overall pick.
Sure.
Like, I mean, we're talking. That's the hard part about it is for a first overall pick.
The expectations.
The expectations
absolutely
probably higher.
Yeah, and I mean, granted, Nashville wasn't very good when he was there. They never had.
Sorry, second overall pick.
Was he?
Sorry, yeah.
Okay, yeah, not a ton of success, but
Vincent LeCavalier went ahead.
Yeah, okay, old Vinny that got bought out, and Tampa Bay still paying him. Anyways,
which in fairness, the guys that went after David Legwan, Brad Stewart, Brian Allen, Vitaly Wisniewski, Rico Fata, Manny Malhotra, Mark Bell, Michael Rupp, Nick Antropov, Jeff Harima, Alex Tenge. It takes to get to 12 to find a player who is probably
a little better. Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. Yeah, but for Legwan, I think in an era where
there was no one in that draft.
No, not really.
Simone Gagne or Scott Gomez went at 27.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And Simone Gagne went at 22. Robin Regier is pretty good. Okay, we'll go back.
Yeah. But anyways, I think for a guy that meant this guy, what he meant to this franchise and his leadership and everything, kind of like Mike Fisher to me, he was just one of those guys that was heart and soul to this team, and I think he meant a lot to the franchise. And so for me, he's up there at number 3 because of that.
Okay, my number 3 is I really. It's funny that I battled between these two players.
Is it?
Because one of them missed the list completely, and the other one makes the list. But this was a battle at number 3.
Lay it on me.
I thought for sure PK Subban was going to be on my list. I thought for sure. I mean, they made
he
the
didn't play
Stanley Cup.
that.
Played over 200 games with them.
Sure, yeah.
Which over
3 seasons,
3 full seasons.
Yeah.
That's within the reason. I thought about putting him on there. He had such a personality impact on this team. But I think when all is said and done, I think that it'll just be relatively forgotten about, almost like Paul Kariya. Like a lot of people forget about it, but I put Paul Kariya on that list because at the time it was so impactful.
Sure.
To sign him.
I know you're going to say Jordan Tutu now,
and so I had to go with Jordan Tutu instead. So I went with Jason Arnott at number 3.
Okay.
Captain of the team for 3 seasons. And he also, in terms of points per game, the second highest points per game as a Predator, second only to Paul Kariya. He had 229 points in 275 games. And when he came on board, it was something a little different, I think. That it was like, all right, Paul Kariya was here, and Peter Forsberg was here, and Jason Arnott had just won Stanley Cups with New Jersey Devils,
right?
And he was the hot commodity, and he decided to go to Nashville. So, I think that again, just yet another inching forward for a franchise that out of all those teams that came in, like Minnesota, Columbus, Nashville. Was there one more team that came in at the same time? Well, Atlanta. It's now Winnipeg.
Yeah.
But we'll just take the whole length of Winnipeg and Atlanta together.
Yeah.
That obviously the Predators are the most successful out of the 4. Winnipeg gets a little more play now because they're in Canada, but I mean, in terms of success, Nashville's pumped out some great players over the years. They've been to the Stanley Cup Finals, which is more than any of those other teams can say.
Very
Minnesota's
true.
been to the conference finals once, but it was
a fluke.
It was in 2003, and they got absolutely destroyed in the conference final. I think got swept.
They got swept, I think,
by the Anaheim Ducks. So, anyways, Jason Arnott on my list.
Okay, now 2-1. I'm sure we both had the same guys there again, just like Detroit.
Yeah.
But the order.
I think your order's okay. Go ahead.
Number 2 for me is Shea Weber, and Pekka Rinne at number 1.
I have flipped. What do you know?
Flipped. All right.
What do you know? Yeah, talk to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Shea Weber. Probably during his reign in Nashville, obviously one of the best defensemen, if not the best defenseman in the league at the time.
I believe he won at Norris once. Did he win at Norris?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he won at Norris. I'm going to pull that up right now, actually, because that'll.
Yeah, he was. I don't know. Go ahead.
No Norris's. Wow.
No Norris.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, honestly, he was up there, during that era in his early 20s, right with the Nick Lidstroms, of the league in terms of like the elite defenseman. And I mean, his production spoke to it. This was a guy who came out, after his first season. He only played 28 games his first season, but 21 came out and played a full season, managed to put up 40 points. And he was playing 20 minutes a night, and then after a couple seasons, that shot right up to 25 minutes a night. Consistent every night. And, I mean, there's a reason guys feared him on the power play. He was just so dangerous and was able to score a lot of goals, too, which a lot of defensemen can't say. I mean, this guy was putting up 23 goals, 16, 19, so he had a lot of pucks end up in the back of the net where guys typically, during that era were tipping pucks, getting, a lot of rebounds and garbage tapping them in, that kind of stuff. So, to me, number 2, just because, again, didn't really, I guess, lead them to any great success in terms of, deep runs in the playoffs and that sort of stuff. Really, they never got over that hump with him. And that's the only knock I have.
He just never really put up huge point totals.
No.
And whenever he was up for the nomination for the Norris, one time it was Chara and Lidstrom.
Right.
Another time it was Duncan. The time Duncan Keith had like 76 points. It was Duncan Keith and Chara.
Okay, yeah.
So I mean the times where he was up for them, he had a good season. He just wasn't as flashy in terms of points. Like the years he was up for those, he had 48 points, 49 points. So
not as flashy as the other guys.
The Norris Trophy is just the scoring.
Well, of course, and that's maybe why Victor Hedman doesn't have a trophy. I mean, a trophy case full of more Norrises right now too. So,
the reason I put Weber above Rinne, I mean, in reality, could you just you could easily flip them. You can make the argument for both. He's played 623 games for them, and has just been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, 341 wins is nothing to balk at all for Pekka Rinne. I just when I think of the Predators, I think of Shea Weber, and I think that's why he topped it.
Okay,
more of a it is hard to put a goalie up at the top there because you wonder. Now, Pekka Rinne, phenomenal goaltender. What could the Predators have done with a goalie who was just a little bit less than Rinne? Probably still relatively the same. Whereas without Shea Weber at times, I mean, Shea Weber had a 23 goal season.
Yeah.
And you don't see defensemen score 20 goals. And so I think ultimately Shea Weber, now I guess Rinne has been the best goalie in the league. At times he did win the Vezina.
Yeah.
That was a weird year for goaltenders. And Shea Weber, to me, he has been the best defenseman in the league multiple years. I don't know if I would say that he was the best goalie in the NHL. He had a Vezina Trophy winning season. I just think there's other goaltenders that I would have chosen over him at every point in the game. Whereas Shea Weber, there was a time where if you could take one defenseman, it'd be Shea Weber.
Interesting. I mean, I could make that argument as well too for Rinne. If you're like, I could take one goalie, like even maybe right.
But he just fell apart in the playoffs so many times, and so that's where I go. He had one really good playoff, and they went to the Stanley. And actually, even in that year,
he had a .930 save percentage that year. So
yes, but
he did carry the team a lot.
Games.
He did have some games, but yeah, the big knock on Rinne is last couple seasons
playoff.
Well, I'd say I'd say 2, but anyways, yeah, the only knock on him is, last 2 seasons, 905, 904 save percentage. Prior to that Stanley Cup run, it was 906, 909. So yes, he does have, some seasons where come playoff time, he doesn't, live up to the hype. So yeah, you could make that knock on him for sure. I get that. But again, on the flip side.
But I mean, are we going to say Bobrovsky's not a really good goaltender?
Right, exactly.
He had some bad playoffs? No.
Yeah, exactly.
So, well, there's our list. Let us know what you think. And, if you had Peter Forsberg on your list, I want to know how. And I want to know why. Maybe he scored the 2 biggest goals ever for the Predators. Who knows? And if there's anybody that we missed, if you were desperately hoping we'd have Craig Smith on the list, or, I guess technically Devin Dubnyk did play 2 games for the Predators. So, maybe there's an argument. J.P. Dumont, Steve Sullivan, all of it. Scott Hartnell. Scott Hartnell I did think about Scott Hartnell.
I did too, actually. I won't lie.
Because he, epitomized. He just was an awesome player. But
he was like the PK Subban of his time.
James Neal.
Oh, boy.
If James Neal had stayed there and had a couple,
I think he would have had more success. But you know what? He might end up. You could very well see him now if he plays well with Connor McDavid. If they slap him on that line, I mean, he could have a lot of success.
I forgot about Alexander Radulov was there.
Yeah, when he slept in and got booted off.
Yeah. He did. I mean, he scored 100. He had 102 points in 154 games.
Yeah, he was good. He was good.
Imagine if they had him now.
Boy. Yeah, when he got his act together.
They might actually be able to score.
Whew.
Yeah. Well, those are our lists. Hit us on at OT Hockey Talk. We will be back with 2 more teams. Let us know what team should we do next. Just tell us. We'll probably, we'll take a vote. Whatever we want to do. An old team and a new team. Doesn't have to be original 6, but maybe original 12.
There you go.
And
don't say the North Stars. If you say the North Stars, I swear to God.
We could also do some all-time California Golden Seals, or all-time
Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, the defunct Winnipeg Jets or something, or the Detroit Falcons, or
Scouts.
the Detroit Cougars.
Did I say Chiefs?
Brooklyn Americans. Maybe the Atlanta Flames. I don't even know who was on the Atlanta Flames.
Nobody. Jim Craig from USA Hockey. That's it.
Tom Lysiak. He had 431 points for them. Almost a point per game. I truly don't know. Pat Quinn. There you go. Bill Clement. Perfect.
Hey,
all right. This is our time to say goodbye. We'll talk to you guys soon.